There's something deliciously ironic about discovering your girlfriend's lies through an app meant to bring people together. It started with a name. Not mine, not hers either, actually, at least not the one I knew. Sitting in my kitchen with half-drunk coffee and a browser full of red flags, I stared at a profile photo I'd seen 100 times before. Sophie's radiant smile, her auburn curls cascading over one shoulder, that signature twinkle in her glacier blue eyes. Only this time, she wasn't Sophie, she was Emily. And yesterday, in a different thread of messages, she'd been Tasha. She must have forgotten which mask she'd worn last. Some might call it paranoia, I call it clarity. When you date someone like Sophie, or Emily, or Tasha, you stop trusting the smile and start watching the shadows it throws. The first real crack appeared last week. Sophie had left her phone on my kitchen counter, face up, screen flashing. A guy named Derek messaged her, "Miss you already, babe. Same time next Thursday." She laughed it off. Work client, harmless flirting. But I'm not an idiot. And I don't believe in harmless lies. That was the moment I shifted gears. Quiet mode. Observation mode. I went through her phone the next time she forgot it. Not out of jealousy, out of necessity. You don't live with a smoke machine and pretend there's no fire. I found 6 different messaging apps. 3 different names. One had her listed as Lena. Another as Sasha. Some profiles overlapped in creepy, uncanny ways. Similar pictures, same cheeky captions, but with slightly altered details like a story told too many times with new embellishments. I started making a list. The names, the accounts, the men. One profile described her as a children's therapist, another as a digital nomad with a passion for climbing. The woman I knew, a part-time copywriter who hated heights. But what chilled me wasn't the deception, it was the ease of it. She slid between personalities like outfits. No hesitation, no remorse. If I hadn't known better, I'd say she even enjoyed the juggling act. And still she kissed me goodnight, still told me she loved me. Like none of it existed. I once told her she was the most fascinating person I'd ever met. Now I know I was only half right. As fiction. I'm not one for drama. But this isn't about a heartbreak. It's about strategy now. You don't play chess with a con artist unless you're sure you can see 3 moves ahead. So I created a new group chat and I invited her victims. The message I typed was short. I didn't want to spoil the surprise. Just a question. Hey guys, quick poll. Who's dating Sophie this week? And then I sat back, sipping my cold coffee, waiting for the first response. This was going to be fun. The responses started trickling in faster than I expected. First came a thumbs up emoji from someone named Leo, then a hesitant message. Wait, Sophie? As in blonde Sophie? Or is she a redhead now? Redhead. That confirmed it. She was switching appearances, not just names. Then a second reply. Bro, you serious? She told me her name was Vanessa. Met her on Bumble. She said she was a yoga instructor recovering from a breakup. A breakup. That's rich. In less than 20 minutes, the chat had ballooned to 7 members, 7 men, each with their own version of Sophie. The stories didn't just overlap, they bled into each other like poorly written fiction. One guy had a photo of her with a nose ring. Another swore she hated jewelry. One knew her as vegan. Another had dinner with her at a steakhouse last week. If she'd been less arrogant, maybe she could have kept the lies straight. But Sophie wasn't just lying. She was performing, rehearsing, recycling lines like a touring actress in a one-woman show called Manipulation, a love story. I felt strangely calm. There was no outburst, no dramatic music swelling in the background, just a quiet, creeping satisfaction. Each new message added another nail to her coffin of credibility. I messaged the group again. If you've ever met her in person, tell me where. I'm mapping her movements. That's when it got weird. Derek, yes, that Derek said. She'd flown to Chicago just 2 weeks ago to visit her sick aunt. She'd stayed in his apartment for 4 days. Thing is, I live with Sophie. Or at least, I thought I did. That same week, she told me she was at a women's tech retreat. No phones allowed, she said, blowing a kiss before disappearing for a long weekend. She must have left from my place straight to the airport, smiling the whole damn way. I started pulling out receipts, literally. Airline confirmations, Uber logs, bank statements. A bit of social engineering got me access to one of her synced Gmail accounts. The browser had helpfully Saved her login. Rookie mistake, Sophie. Her email was a carnival of chaos. Confirmation letters under different aliases, Venmo transfers with hearts and miss you notes, a calendar with color-coded meetups, some overlapped. I kid you not, there was one Tuesday where she had brunch with Jared, a gym session with Marco, and dinner with me. The logistics alone deserved an award. But her game had a fatal flaw. She never expected her characters to meet. That's why the group chat felt like building a time bomb from stolen parts. Every man in there had something to contribute. Photos, screenshots, voicemails. There was even a handwritten letter. Who does that anymore? Then came the twist that made my stomach flip. Someone added a woman to the chat. Her name was Mia. I blinked at the screen. Mia's profile picture was soft and smiling, a barista apparently based in the same city. She typed, "Hi, I don't know what Sophie told you guys, but she said she was leaving me for good. I thought I was the only one she cheated on. She wasn't. Turns out, none of us were the side piece. We were all the side pieces. Sophie wasn't just a serial liar, she was a collector. Each person she manipulated was another trophy on her emotional shelf. I thanked Mia privately, told her she deserved better like the rest of us. Then I went back to the group chat, took a breath, and typed one more message. Final phase begins tomorrow. Don't post anything yet, I've got a plan, and she won't see it coming. My phone vibrated again. Another man had just joined. Sophie's house of mirrors was cracking, and I was holding the hammer. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of sadness. That ship had sailed somewhere between I'm at a tech retreat and I'll call you when I land. No, this was focus. Pure predatory focus, the kind that sharpens when you know exactly what needs to be done. By morning, the group chat had 14 members. Men and one woman. Mia wasn't alone for long. Another woman joined by noon, a grad student who had been promised an exclusive relationship for almost a year. Ray, had even helped her move apartments. You had to admire the effort, or you would if you didn't know where it led. I created a Google Drive folder and titled it the Sophie Files, organized, color-coded, and time-stamped. Every screenshot, photo, text, email, and video we'd collected in less than 24 hours. I even wrote short bios. Jacob met Sophie as Lena at a marketing seminar in Portland, dated 3 months, believed she was saving up to move in with him. Each name added weight, each lie sharpened the point. And here's the thing about liars. They always underestimate the power of collaboration. Sophie had built a web, but she'd assumed none of her flies could talk to each other. Now we were spinning a web of our own. The final piece was theatrical, necessary, something memorable. I created a new group chat on Telegram, a platform Sophie had once praised for its privacy. I named it Guess Who's Dating Sophie? Then I invited everyone, all 17 of us. Once they were in, I dropped the final message, the match to the fuse. Hey everyone, Sophie told each of us a different story, different name, different life. I figured it was time we told her the same story at the same time. Attached was a group photo collage, screenshots of each of our chats with her, a digital war paint of betrayal, curated for maximum impact. Then I gave the green light. We hit send at exactly 6 p.m. Simultaneous text, Instagram DM, what's up, email, even a handwritten letter from one poor bastard who still believed in paper mail. 6 o'clock came, and Sophie's phone lit up like a Christmas tree with a personality disorder. I watched it unfold from the bar across the street. Her apartment windows were glowing, light on, silhouette pacing. Her blinds were half drawn, her figure occasionally pausing near the window like a trapped animal sniffing smoke. I imagined her unlocking her phone. Message 1, who are you today, Sophie, or is it Isabel tonight? Message 2, loved brunch last week. Shame it overlapped with your date with my friend Jacob. Message 3, you lied to all of us, and we've met, all of us. Then a deluge. Dozens of messages, some furious, some heartbroken, some sarcastic as hell. My personal favorite, if this is your idea of a group date, it's the worst one I've ever been on. I didn't expect her to reply to any of us, and she didn't, not at first. Her phone must have been vibrating so hard it threatened to burn through the table. I watched her slump onto her couch, motionless for a long time. She wasn't crying. Not yet. Shock comes first, then denial, then rage. She stood up abruptly, made a call, then another, likely trying to figure out just how many people had turned on her in unison. Her panic was a symphony from afar. I had set the stage. The curtain was lifting. And then I got a message from her, a simple text. What the hell did you do? I didn't answer. Instead, I posted one final message into the group thread. Gentlemen, ladies, we've confronted the villain. Now go live your lives. You're free. That was always the point. Not just vengeance, not just revelation. Freedom. But revenge? Well, that was dessert. An hour later, Sophie posted a cryptic story to her Instagram, a black screen with the words, "People are never who they say they are." I laughed out loud. In the bar, the irony was so thick I nearly choked on it. I knew what came next. She'd play victim, cry betrayal, claim she was the one being stalked, manipulated, bullied, and maybe some people would believe her. Some always do, but the people who mattered, they'd seen the receipts. The masks had fallen, and all that was left was Sophie. Real name, still unclear, alone in a digital hurricane of her own making. She hadn't just lied. She'd networked her lies, and I'd simply cross-referenced them. There was no going back now. She knew. We knew. And nothing in her twisted little Rolodex of identities could save her. The next morning felt anticlimactic. I expected something, anything, an email, a voicemail, a knock on the door with tears, or threats, or both. Instead, there was silence. The kind that doesn't comfort, it echoes. My phone, once a flurry of replies and shared screenshots, was still. No new messages in the group chat, no late-night confessions or surprise revelations. It was as if everyone had exhaled in unison and moved on. Except me. Revenge, it turns out, is not a cleanse. It doesn't make you lighter. It just replaces the questions with aftermath. I sat at the window of my apartment, our apartment, watching a city that didn't care what just happened. Taxis kept moving, coffee shops opened, a woman jogged by with her dog, AirPods in, immune to my carefully constructed collapse of another person's illusion. The phone finally buzzed just after noon. It was Mia. I blocked her. I needed to. Thank you for doing what I couldn't. I stared at the message longer than I needed to, not because of what she said, but because of what I felt reading it. Relief, but also guilt. Sophie had done this to herself, sure, but I had orchestrated her downfall with surgical precision. I had exposed her lies in front of an audience that once adored her. I had handed her reflection back to her with all the filters stripped away, and now I felt tired. No, I didn't want her back. That wasn't it. But when you spend months, maybe years loving someone, even if it turns out they were fiction, there's residue, not of love necessarily, but of investment, of belief, of hope. And that's what burned, knowing I had been hopeful. She texted once more that day, just one sentence. "Sophie, you ruined everything." No apology, no denial, just blame. It made me laugh out loud in the middle of my living room like some unhinged sitcom character. Because even at the end, especially at the end, she refused to admit the mask was hers to begin with. She didn't ask me why I did it. She knew. That evening I decided to leave the apartment. It was filled with too many shadows that weren't mine. I packed light, just a backpack and a duffel. I left her things untouched, like a crime scene that still needed forensic attention. Outside, the city air hit different, cleaner. Not better, but freer. I checked the group chat one last time. A few had left the conversation already. Some had muted it. A couple exchanged light jokes. Sarcastic closure, the kind men use when they're afraid of vulnerability. Mia posted a final note. "Yeah, let's not let her define how we love. We're better than that." I saved that message. The next week passed in strange fragments. I stayed with a friend for a few nights, someone who knew nothing about Sophie. It was nice, being anonymous, unconnected. I kept to myself mostly, declined invites, ignored Instagram. And then came the message. Not to me, to all of us. A public post from Sophie's new account. I'd made mistakes. I trusted too easily, gave too much of myself, and was taken advantage of. We live in an age of surveillance and cruelty disguised as concern. To everyone I hurt, I'm sorry you misunderstood me. The caption, "Moving to LA for a fresh start, please be kind." I stared at the screen, jaw tight. She still couldn't do it. Not even now. Not after everything. No responsibility, no introspection, just rerouted victimhood and a new city to conquer. Classic. I thought about responding, posting receipts, calling her out publicly, but I didn't, because at some point, you stop chasing justice and start choosing peace. I turned my phone off and walked outside. It was raining lightly, one of those spring drizzles that didn't demand an umbrella but made the world feel softer, cleaner. I bought a coffee and sat by the window of a quiet cafe, people watching, and then some strange happened. I smiled. A real one, not because I had won, not because she was gone, but because the silence in my life now belonged to me. It wasn't filled with suspicion or false reassurances or careful calculations. It was just quiet. I didn't know what came next. Maybe I'd move. Maybe I'd finally finish that book I kept saying I'd write. Maybe I'd meet someone new, someone real. But for now, I sipped my coffee. I watched the rain trace the glass, and I allowed myself, for the first time in months, to feel nothing at all, which, oddly enough, felt like everything. 3 months later, I saw her again, not in person. She showed up in someone else's story, mutuals from a past life I'd since muted, a boomerang clip from a bar in another city, new name tag, same smirk. She looked radiant. She always did. Sophie knew how to appear well even when everything beneath was fraying. That was her real talent, reinvention. Only this time, I didn't feel the usual tightness in my chest. No reflexive analysis, no cold mental math of dates, names, or lies. Just a flicker of distant recognition, like seeing a character from a novel you once read and never finished. I smiled, not because I missed her, but because I didn't. Life moved on quietly. I moved apartments, got a cat named Orwell naturally, spent less time online, more time on my feet, discovered that walking without a destination was better therapy than I'd ever given credit. I didn't delete the group chat. Most people left on their own eventually. Mia and I kept in touch for a while. Light, respectful check-ins. She sent me a photo one day from a bookstore where she'd found a copy of The Art of the Con. She added, "Thought of her immediately. Hope you're thriving." I was, not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. I never sought to reclaim my dignity or prove a point anymore. That part of me had healed into something quieter, a kind of internal compass, one that pointed to peace, not control. I started dating again eventually, slowly, carefully, and then one day I met her. Not Sophie, not anyone remotely like her. Her name was Elise. She wasn't trying to be mysterious. She wasn't performing. She didn't dress to impress or speak in curated metaphors. She was, in every small way, authentic. We met in the most mundane way possible. She spilled coffee on me at a bookstore, apologized 3 times, and offered to buy me a new shirt. I declined but accepted the apology, then accepted her invitation to grab lunch the next weekend. I didn't tell her about Sophie right away. When I eventually did, I kept it brief. She didn't pry, just nodded and said sometimes people are puzzles with missing pieces. And sometimes they cut you on purpose. That was it. That was enough. Months later, we were sitting in a cafe, our usual spot, a little place tucked between 2 glass towers. No influencers, no curated playlists, just the clink of porcelain and the occasional bark of a dog tied up outside. Elise looked up from her tea and said, "You seem like someone who once built armor for a living." I laughed, and now you don't need it. She was right. Not because I'd forgotten the betrayal, but because I'd survived it, transformed it, worn it down to something smooth, something solid. Closure isn't a moment, it's a series of choices. To not text, to not stalk, to not wonder what they're doing now, to leave the past where it belongs, even when it not. As we left the cafe, Elise reached for my hand. No performance, no smoke. Just fingers interlocking naturally, honestly. Across the street, I saw a woman standing alone, scrolling through her phone. Red hair, bright blue eyes. For a split second, I thought it was her, but it wasn't. Just someone else. Someone real. I squeezed Elise's hand and kept walking.